The stars had always been silent, and humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. But on that terrible morning in June, they finally got their answer. Queen Solara of the HFY Dominion stood on the command bridge of her massive worldship, the Void's End, and she looked down at the blue planet below with ancient eyes that had seen 1,000 worlds burn. She was tall, nearly 12 feet in height, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed with a deep purple light. Her armor was not metal, but living tissue, grown from the bones of conquered species, and it moved and breathed with her like a second skin. She had ruled the HFY for 10,000 years, and in that time she had led the Harvester fleet across the galaxy, consuming civilization after civilization. Some had begged for mercy, offering treasures and technologies beyond imagination. Others had tried to fight, assembling their greatest warriors and their most powerful weapons. None of it had ever mattered. The HFY were ancient when the first humans were learning to walk upright, and their technology was so advanced that it seemed like magic to lesser species. "My queen," spoke Admiral Vexenar, her most loyal commander, "the human military forces are attempting to organize a defense. Shall we begin the harvest?" Solara did not answer immediately. She simply watched the planet turning slowly below her, watching the lights of human cities glittering in the darkness. She had studied this species before arriving, as she always did. She knew their history of wars and suffering. She knew their short lifespans and their fragile bodies. She knew that they had only just begun to reach beyond their own world, taking their first baby steps into the cosmos. They were nothing special. They were just another primitive species waiting to be consumed. "Begin," she commanded, and her voice echoed across the entire fleet. The invasion started at dawn over the city called New York. The sky turned red as thousands of HFY dropships descended through the atmosphere, and the sound they made was like the screaming of dying gods. Human fighter jets rose to meet them, brave pilots pushing their machines to the limit, but they were swatted from the sky like insects. Missiles launched from the ground, nuclear warheads among them, but the HFY shields absorbed everything without even flickering. Within the first hour, the human military command structure had collapsed. Generals tried to coordinate a defense, but their communications were jammed. Their satellites were destroyed, and their bases were reduced to smoking craters. The President of the United States was evacuated to a secret bunker, but Solara did not care about human leaders. They were all the same in the end, just frightened creatures hiding in holes while their world burned around them. The HFY ground forces were even more terrifying than their ships. They stood 8 feet tall on average, with 4 arms and thick armored hides that could stop bullets. They moved through the streets of human cities like nightmares given flesh, and the sounds of their weapons were the last things millions of humans ever heard. By the end of the first day, every major military base on Earth had been destroyed. By the end of the second day, every government had fallen. By the end of the third day, the resistance had been reduced to scattered groups of survivors hiding in the ruins of their civilization. Queen Solara watched it all from her throne aboard the Void's End, and she felt nothing. She had seen this same story play out on 1,000 different worlds. The details changed, the faces changed, but the ending was always the same. Species rose, species fell, and the HFY continued on forever. But something was different this time, though she could not say what. There was a strange feeling in her chest, an unfamiliar sensation that she had not experienced in millennia. She dismissed it as nothing important, but it would not go away. On the morning of the 4th day, she made a decision that surprised even herself. She would go down to the surface personally. She wanted to see the ruins up close, to walk through the ashes of another dead civilization. It was not something she normally did, but something was pulling her downward, some instinct she did not understand. Her guards protested, of course. The surface was still dangerous, they said. There were pockets of human resistance, desperate survivors with nothing left to lose. But Solara silenced them with a single look. She was the queen of the HFY, the destroyer of worlds, and nothing on this primitive planet could possibly harm her. She descended in a small shuttle, accompanied by 12 of her elite guards, the deadliest warriors in the Dominion. They landed in what had once been the heart of New York City, though there was little left to recognize. The great towers had fallen, the streets were filled with rubble and ash, and the air smelled of smoke and death. Solara walked through the destruction with slow, measured steps, her guards spreading out around her in a protective formation. She saw bodies in the rubble, humans who had not been fast enough to escape. She saw burnt vehicles and shattered glass and the remnants of a civilization that had thought itself so important. She felt nothing. Why would she feel anything for these creatures who had existed for such a brief moment in the history of the universe? But then she turned a corner and she stopped. There, in the middle of the ash-covered street, stood a single human. It was a woman, middle-aged by human standards, with dark hair streaked with gray and a face covered in soot and dried blood. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and she carried no weapon that Solara could see. She should have run. Every other human who had seen the queen had either fled in terror or fallen to their knees begging for mercy. But this woman did neither. She simply stood there in the street, her hands at her sides, and she looked directly at Solara with eyes that held no fear. The queen's guards raised their weapons immediately, ready to vaporize this insignificant creature, but Solara held up one hand to stop them. She found herself unable to look away from this strange human who dared to stand before her. "What are you doing?" Solara asked, her voice echoing with ancient power. "Do you not know what I am? Do you not understand that I could end your existence with a thought?" The woman did not answer at first. She simply continued to stare at the queen, and there was something in her eyes that Solara had never seen before in any species she had conquered. It was not courage exactly, though courage was part of it. It was something deeper, something that burned like a flame that refused to be extinguished. "I know exactly what you are," the woman finally spoke, and her voice was hoarse but steady. "You are the monster that destroyed my world. You are the nightmare that killed my friends and my neighbors and everyone I have ever known." She took a step forward, and Solara found herself taking a step back before she could stop herself. The queen of the HFY, who had never retreated from anything in 10,000 years, had just stepped back from a single unarmed human. What was happening to her? "But I am not afraid of you," the woman continued, and her voice grew stronger with each word. "I refuse to be afraid of you. You can kill me if you want, but you will not make me run. You will not make me beg. I am a human being, and I will face my death on my feet." Solara stared at this impossible creature, and for the first time and longer than she could remember, she did not know what to do next. The silence between them stretched on for what felt like an eternity, and neither the queen nor the human woman moved a single inch. The HFY guards looked at each other in confusion, their weapons still raised, waiting for the command to fire that never came. Solara had conquered species that could bend reality with their minds. She had defeated warriors who could move faster than light, and generals who had planned their strategies for centuries. But she had never, in all her 10,000 years of existence, encountered anything quite like this dirty, wounded, utterly insignificant human woman who refused to show fear. "You are either very brave or very foolish," the queen finally said, and she was surprised to hear a note of curiosity in her own voice. "Perhaps both. Tell me, human, what is your name?" "My name is Elena," the woman replied, and she did not lower her gaze even for a moment. "Elena Vasquez, and I am neither brave nor foolish. I am simply a mother who has nothing left to lose." "A mother?" Solara felt something stir in the depths of her memory, something ancient and painful that she had buried long ago. The HFY did not have mothers in the way that humans understood the word, but Solara remembered a time before her transformation, a time when she had been something different. She pushed the memory away and focused on the creature before her. "A mother," she repeated. "And where is your child, Elena Vasquez? Did they die in the invasion? Is that why you stand before me with death in your eyes?" Alana's expression flickered for just a moment, and Solara saw something pass across her face. It was pain, yes, but also something else. It was determination, fierce and unbreakable, like a fire that burned hotter the more you tried to extinguish it. "My daughter is alive," Elena said, and her voice was hard as steel. "She's in a shelter behind me, along with 30 other survivors. Children and elderly and wounded, all of them depending on me to protect them." Solara looked past the woman and saw the entrance to an underground parking structure, partially hidden by fallen debris. So that was why this human stood here. She was not brave or foolish at all. She was simply standing between a predator and her young, the most basic instinct in the universe. But that only made her actions more impressive, not less. Because Elena had to know that she could not win. She had to know that nothing she did could possibly stop the HFY from taking whatever they wanted. Yet here she stood anyway, a tiny creature of flesh and blood, facing down the most powerful being in the galaxy. "You cannot stop me," Solara said, and she took a step forward. "You know this. You are weak and small and breakable. I could walk through you like you were made of paper and take everyone in that shelter." "Yes," Elena agreed, and she did not move. "You could, but you would have to kill me first. I will not make it easy for you. I will fight you with my bare hands if I have to. I will bite and scratch and claw at you until there is nothing left of me. And even then, my ghost will haunt you for the rest of your immortal life." The queen laughed, and the sound was like thunder rolling across mountains. It was not a cruel laugh or a mocking laugh. It was a laugh of genuine surprise, something she had not felt in thousands of years. "You would haunt me?" she asked. "You, a creature whose entire species has existed for less time than I have been alive? You think your spirit could trouble me?" "I know it would," Elena replied. "Because you would remember me. You would remember this moment, standing in the ruins of my world, facing a woman who refused to kneel. And every time you destroy another civilization, every time you watch another species beg for mercy, you will think of me. You will wonder why I was different. And that question will eat at you forever." Solara stopped laughing. She stared at the human woman with new eyes, seeing her not as prey, but as something else entirely. There was wisdom in those words, a deep understanding of psychology that surprised the queen. This was not just a desperate mother making empty threats. This was a being who understood the nature of memory and immortality. "You are more clever than I expected," Solara admitted. "But cleverness will not save you. Nothing will save you. Your species is doomed, and there is nothing you can do to change that." "Maybe," Elena said, and she shrugged her shoulders. "Probably. But that does not mean I should stop trying. That is what you do not understand about humans. We do not fight because we think we can win. We fight because fighting is who we are. We fight because surrender is worse than death. We fight because our children are watching, and we want them to know that their parents never gave up." She pointed at the shelter behind her. "My daughter is 7 years old. Her name is Sophia, and she has her father's eyes and her grandmother's smile. 3 days ago, her biggest worry was whether she would get a puppy for her birthday. Now she is hiding underground while monsters destroy everything she has ever known. And the only thing I can give her now is the memory of her mother standing tall. Not running, not begging, standing. Solara felt something strange happening inside her chest. It was pressure, building and building, like something was trying to break free from deep within her. She had not felt anything like this in millennia, not since she had first become the queen of the HFY. She reached out with her mind, using the psychic abilities that had helped her conquer 1,000 worlds, and she touched Elena's thoughts. She expected to find fear hidden beneath the surface, terror that the human was simply hiding behind a mask of courage. But what she found was so much more. She saw Elena's memories playing out like a movie. She saw the moment when the invasion began, when Elena had been at work in an office building downtown. She saw Elena running through the streets as buildings collapsed around her, dodging HFY weapons and falling debris. She saw Elena reaching her daughter's school just as it was being evacuated, grabbing Sophia in her arms and refusing to let go. She saw Elena carrying her daughter for 3 miles through the burning city, her arms screaming with pain, her lungs filled with smoke, but never stopping, never slowing down. She saw Elena fighting off looters with a piece of broken glass, protecting a group of children she had gathered along the way. She saw Elena finding the shelter and organizing the survivors, giving them hope when there was no reason to hope. And through it all, Solara felt the fear. Elena was absolutely terrified, more frightened than any creature the Queen had ever encountered. Her fear was like a black ocean, vast and deep and overwhelming. But Elena had built walls around that fear. She had taken her terror and locked it away in a cage made of pure willpower. She had refused to let her fear control her, refused to let it stop her from doing what needed to be done. This was not the absence of fear. This was something far more impressive. This was fear transformed into strength, terror turned into determination. Solara pulled back from Elena's mind, and she realized that her hands were shaking. The queen of the HFY, who had not trembled before anything in 10,000 years, was shaking because of a single human mother. "What are you?" she whispered, and for the first time and longer than she could remember, there was uncertainty in her voice. Elena smiled, and it was a fierce and terrible smile. "I am human," she said, "and we do not break." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge, like a declaration of war against the entire universe, and Solara found herself unable to respond. She had heard so many speeches from so many species over the millennia, desperate words from desperate creatures, trying to convince themselves that they mattered, but this was different. Elena was not trying to convince herself of anything. She already knew exactly who she was and what she was willing to do. There was no doubt in her voice, no hesitation in her stance. She had looked into the face of certain death and decided that death would have to earn its victory. "You say that you do not break," Solara finally spoke, her voice quiet and thoughtful. "But I have broken countless species before. I have watched civilizations crumble, and beings far more powerful can you beg for mercy at my feet. What makes you think that humans are any different?" Elena took a deep breath, and Solara could see her forcing herself to stay calm. The fear was still there, contained behind those walls of will, but it had not weakened or disappeared. If anything, it seemed stronger than before. "Because I have studied history," Elena replied. "Human history. We have been breaking each other for thousands of years. We have survived plagues that killed half our population. We have survived wars that destroyed entire continents. We have survived famines and earthquakes and floods and everything else the universe has thrown at us. And every single time, we have gotten back up." She gestured at the ruins around them, at the fallen buildings and the burning sky. "You think this is the first time we have faced extinction? You think this is the first time our entire species has been threatened? We have stared into the void before, Queen Solara. We have looked at our own end and said no. Not today, not ever. And we meant it." Solara dismissed her guards with a wave of her hand, and they retreated to the edge of the street, confusion clear on their alien faces. They had never seen their queen behave like this before, never seen her engage with a conquered species as anything other than prey. But the queen was not interested in conquest at this moment. She was interested in something far more valuable. She was interested in understanding. "I have seen the records of your species," she said, walking slowly toward Elena. "I know how young you are, how primitive your technology, how limited your understanding of the universe. By any measure, you should be one of the weakest species we have ever encountered." She stopped just a few feet away from the human woman, towering over her like a mountain of darkness. "And yet here you stand, unarmed, unprotected, facing certain death without a single tremor in your voice. How is this possible? What is the secret of your strength?" Elena looked up at the massive alien queen, and she did not flinch away from those glowing purple eyes. "There is no secret," she said. "We are exactly what we appear to be. Fragile, short-lived, constantly fighting amongst ourselves. We are messy and complicated, and we make mistakes all the time. But that is exactly why we are strong." "I do not understand," Solara admitted, and the words felt strange in her mouth. She could not remember the last time she had admitted ignorance about anything. "Because we know we are going to die," Elena explained. "Every single one of us knows from the moment we are old enough to understand that our lives will end. We do not have 10,000 years like you. We have decades, if we are lucky. And that knowledge, that constant awareness of our own mortality, it changes everything." She stepped closer to the queen, and Solara found herself unable to move away. When you know you are going to die, every moment becomes precious. Every choice becomes important. We cannot waste time waiting for the perfect opportunity or the perfect plan. We have to act now, because now is all we have. And that makes us dangerous, Queen Solara. That makes us unpredictable. Solara's mind was racing. She had studied thousands of species, learned their cultures and their beliefs, understood the forces that drove them. But she had never considered mortality as a source of strength. For the Zethkai, who could live for eons, death was something to be avoided and feared. But for humans, it was a constant companion, a teacher, a motivation. "Your warriors fought even when they knew they could not win," she said slowly, remembering the invasion. "Your pilots flew directly at our ships, sacrificing themselves to buy moments of time for others. I thought they were stupid, that they did not understand the mathematics of war. But they understood perfectly, did they not? They were choosing how to die, not whether to die." "Yes." Elena's eyes were bright with fierce pride. "That is who we are. We do not have the luxury of immortality, so we do not fear death the way you do. We only fear dying badly, dying for nothing, dying without meaning. Give a human something worth dying for, and they will run toward death with a smile on their face." The queen was silent for a long moment, processing everything she had learned. She had come to Earth expecting another easy conquest, another footnote in the history of the Zethkai Dominion. Instead, she had discovered something unprecedented, something that challenged everything she thought she understood about the universe. "Your daughter," she said suddenly. "Sophia, she is worth dying for?" Elena's expression changed immediately. Where there had been fierce defiance, there was now something softer, something warmer, but no less powerful. "She is worth everything," Elena said, and her voice trembled for the first time. "She is the reason I wake up in the morning. She is the reason I kept running through the fire when my body wanted to stop. She is the reason I am standing here in front of you right now, talking to a monster who has destroyed my entire world." Tears began to fall from Elena's eyes, cutting clean tracks through the soot on her face. "I do not care about myself. I stopped caring about my own survival the moment the invasion began. But Sophia is innocent. She has done nothing wrong. She deserves to live, to grow up, to fall in love and have children of her own someday. And I will do anything to give her that chance. Solara felt something crack inside her, deep in the core of her being. It was a sensation she had not felt in millennia, a feeling she had thought long dead and buried. It was pain, but not physical pain. It was the pain of memory, of loss, of choices made so long ago that she had almost forgotten they were choices. She remembered another world, another time, another version of herself. She remembered being young and afraid and desperate. She remembered a face that had once looked at her the way Elena looked at her daughter. I had someone like that once, Solara heard herself say, and her own voice sounded strange and distant. Someone I would have done anything to protect. Elena stared up at her, and there was surprise in her eyes, but also something else. Was it recognition? Understanding? What happened to them? Elena asked softly. The queen of the HFY, destroyer of worlds, conqueror of galaxies, closed her glowing eyes. I failed them, she whispered. I failed them, and I have been punishing the universe for it ever since. The confession hung in the air between them, heavier than all the rubble in the ruined city, and Elena found herself looking at the alien queen with new eyes. This was not what she had expected. She had expected a monster without feelings, a creature of pure destruction who killed because killing was all she knew. But now she was seeing something else, something hidden beneath all those layers of power and cruelty. What happened? Elena asked again, and her voice was gentle now, the voice she used when Sophia woke up crying from a nightmare. Who did you fail? Solara opened her eyes, and the purple glow seemed dimmer than before, softer and more distant. She looked at Elena, and for just a moment, she was not the queen of the HFY anymore. She was just a being who had lived too long and lost too much. Her name was Valria, Solara said, and the name seemed to cause her physical pain. She was my sister, though that word does not truly capture what she meant to me. Among my people, there were bonds deeper than blood, connections of the mind and soul that tied two beings together forever. She paused, gathering herself, reaching back through thousands of years of memory. We were not always conquerors. Once, long ago, the HFY were scholars and artists and dreamers. We explored the universe not to dominate but to understand. Valria was the greatest dreamer of us all. She believed that all species could live together in peace, that the galaxy was big enough for everyone. Elena listened in silence, afraid that even a single word might break the spell that had come over the queen. And then the destroyers came, Solara continued, and her voice grew hard with ancient hatred. They were a machine intelligence, cold and logical, and utterly without mercy. They decided that organic life was inefficient and needed to be eliminated. They swept through our part of the galaxy like a plague, burning world after world. We tried to fight. We assembled the greatest fleet our species had ever created and met them in battle. But they were too many and too powerful. For every one we destroyed, 10 more appeared. Our civilization was falling, our people were dying, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. Elena felt her heart aching for this creature who had destroyed her world. It was a strange feeling, sympathy for a monster, but she could not help it. She knew what it was like to face an enemy that could not be defeated, to watch everything you loved being taken away. Valria came to me with a plan, Solara said. She had discovered an ancient technology, something left behind by beings older than the universe itself. It could give us the power to defeat the destroyers, but there was a price. The technology required a host, a single being who would merge with it and become something new, something beyond what any HFY had ever been. And you volunteered, Elena guessed. No! Solara's voice cracked with grief. Valria did. She said that she could not ask anyone else to make such a sacrifice. She said that it was her responsibility as the one who found it. But I knew what it would do to her. The merger would destroy her personality, her memories, everything that made her who she was. She would become a weapon, nothing more. The Queen's massive form shuddered with emotion. I could not let her do it. I could not watch my sister erase herself to save us. So I did the only thing I could think of. I knocked her unconscious and took her place. I merged with the ancient technology and became what I am now. Tears were falling from those glowing purple eyes now, strange luminescent drops that sizzled when they hit the ground. It worked. I destroyed the destroyers, every single one of them. I saved my species and my world. But when I returned, when I looked for Velria to tell her that we were safe, she was gone. The shock of what I had done, the betrayal of her sacrifice, it broke her. She walked into the void between stars and never came back. Solara fell to her knees, and the impact shook the ground. Elena stood before the kneeling queen, looking up at a being of unimaginable power who was weeping like a child. I saved everyone except the one person who mattered most, Solara whispered. And I have spent 10,000 years trying to fill the emptiness she left behind. I thought that if I conquered enough worlds, if I destroyed enough civilizations, the pain would finally stop. But it never stops. It never gets better. I have become the very thing she died trying to prevent. Elena reached out with one small hand and placed it on the Queen's massive arm. The touch was like ice, cold beyond anything she had ever felt, but she did not pull away. You became a monster because you loved someone, Elena said softly. You twisted yourself into this shape because you could not handle the grief of losing her. Yes, Solara admitted. I told myself that I was making the galaxy strong, that I was eliminating weakness and ensuring that no one would ever face what we faced. But I was lying. I was just destroying because destruction was easier than feeling. She looked at Elena with eyes full of ancient pain. And then I came to your world, expecting another easy conquest, and instead I found you. A mother standing in the ashes, willing to die for her child, showing the same love that I once felt for Velria. And I realized that in all these millennia, I have not destroyed weakness. I have destroyed love. I have destroyed the very thing that makes existence worth living. Elena squeezed the Queen's arm, and she felt something shifting inside her. The hatred she had felt, the rage at this creature who had killed billions of her people, it was not gone, but it was changing. She was beginning to understand that monsters were not born. They were made, carved out of ordinary beings by grief and guilt and unbearable loss. It is not too late, Elena said, and she was surprised to find that she meant it. You have lived for 10,000 years. You could live for 10,000 more. That is time enough to change, to become something different, to make amends. Solara laughed bitterly. How could I possibly make amends for what I have done? I have killed trillions. I have burned 1,000 worlds. There is no forgiveness great enough to balance those scales. Maybe not, Elena agreed. Maybe you can never undo the damage you have caused. But you can stop causing more. You can choose right now, in this moment, to be different. That is what Velria would have wanted, is it not? She believed that all species could live in peace. She believed in the possibility of change. The Queen stared at Elena, and something flickered in those ancient eyes. You would forgive me? Solara asked. After everything I have done to your world, to your people, you would give me another chance? Elena shook her head. I cannot forgive you. That is not mine to give. But I can tell you this. My daughter is in that shelter behind me. She has seen the worst things the universe has to offer. But if I can show her that even the darkest monster can choose to be different, that even the greatest evil can turn toward good, then maybe, just maybe, she will grow up believing that change is possible. She looked directly into the Queen's eyes. You asked me why I was not afraid of you. This is why. Because I believe that there is something inside you worth saving. Valria believed it. And I believe it too. The queen of the HFY remained on her knees in the ashes of humanity's greatest city, and for the first time in 10,000 years, she did not know what to do. Elena's words echoed through her mind like bells ringing across an empty canyon, waking something that had been sleeping for so long she had forgotten it existed. She thought about Valria, about the sister she had lost, about the dream of peace that had died with her. All these years, she had told herself that Valria's vision was naive, that the universe was too cruel for such idealism. But what if the cruelty was not in the universe at all? What if she had been the one making it cruel? There is something I must show you, Solara said, and she rose slowly to her feet. She raised one massive hand toward the shelter entrance. Call your daughter. Let her come out. I promise on whatever remains of my honor that no harm will come to her. Elena hesitated, and Solara could see the war playing out on her face. Every instinct was telling her not to trust this alien monster, not to risk her child's life on the word of a creature who had destroyed billions. But there was something else there too, something that whispered of faith and hope and second chances. Sophia! Elena called out, her voice carrying through the dusty air. It is safe. You can come out. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a small face appeared in the shadows of the shelter entrance. The girl was 7 years old, with dark curly hair and wide brown eyes that had seen too much horror for someone so young. She was clutching a tattered stuffed rabbit, holding it against her chest like a shield. Mama, Sophia's voice was tiny and frightened. Come here, baby, Elena said, holding out her arms. Come to Mama. Sophia ran across the rubble-strewn street and threw herself into her mother's arms. Elena caught her and held her tight, and Solara watched them embrace with eyes that burned with emotions she had thought long dead. This is what I have been destroying, the queen whispered. This is what I have been taking from the universe. Not just lives, but love. Not just civilizations, but moments like this, children running to their mothers, families holding each other close. I forgot what these things meant. I forgot why they mattered. Sophia peeked out from her mother's arms and looked up at the towering alien with wide eyes. There was fear in those eyes, but also curiosity, the endless curiosity of childhood, but not even the apocalypse could completely extinguish. Are you the monster that hurt our city? Sophia asked. Solara knelt down again, bringing herself closer to the child's level. Even kneeling, she was enormous compared to the tiny human girl, but she tried to make herself seem less frightening. Yes, she admitted. I am the monster. I have done terrible things, things that can never be forgiven. But your mother has shown me something today, something I had forgotten. She has shown me that there is still good in the universe, still love and courage and hope. And I have decided that I do not want to destroy those things anymore. Sophia looked at her mother, then back at the queen. Are you going to stop being bad now? She asked with the simple directness that only children possess. Solara felt something like a smile trying to form on her face, though her features had not made that expression in millennia. I am going to try, she said. I cannot promise that I will succeed. I have been doing bad things for a very long time, and it is hard to change. But I am going to try, because your mother reminded me of someone I loved very much, someone who believed that change was always possible. She stood up and turned toward the sky, where the massive shapes of her fleet still hung like dark clouds above the burning city. She raised one hand, and power flowed from her fingertips, a signal that reached across thousands of miles to every ship in the invasion force. All HFY forces, this is your queen speaking. Cease all hostile actions immediately. Begin withdrawal procedures. Leave this world in peace. The response came instantly through her mental link with her commanders. Confusion, disbelief, arguments and protests from admirals who could not understand why they were being ordered to abandon a conquest that was already won. But none of them dared to disobey. She was the queen, and her word was absolute law. Within minutes, the dropships were rising back into the sky. The ground forces were retreating to their transports, and the great weapons that had been burning humanity's cities fell silent. All across Earth, people looked up in amazement as their destroyers simply left. "Why?" Elena asked, and there were tears streaming down her face. "Why are you doing this? You have already won. You could take everything." "Because winning is not enough anymore," Solara replied. "Because I have been winning for 10,000 years, and all I have won is emptiness. Your species calls this world Earth, yes? It is a small name for a small planet, but it has taught me something that all my conquests never did." She looked down at Elena and Sophia, mother and daughter holding each other in the ruins of their world. "It has taught me that the smallest things are often the most precious. A child's love, a mother's courage, the willingness to stand and face the darkness, even when there is no hope of victory. These are the treasures of the universe, the only things that truly matter, and I have been burning them wherever I found them." She reached out with her mind one last time, touching Elena's thoughts with a gentleness she had almost forgotten she possessed. "Humanity is not ready for the galaxy," she said. "You are still young and divided, and you have so much growing to do. But I have seen what you are capable of. I have seen the fire that burns in your hearts, the stubborn refusal to surrender that defines your species. And I know that one day you will take your place among the stars." Elena felt the touch in her mind and understood that this was a gift, a message, and a promise all in one. "The galaxy may not be ready for humanity either," Solara continued, and there was something like warmth in her ancient voice. "You will challenge everything they believe about strength and weakness. You will show them that mortality can be a gift, that limitation can inspire greatness, that love is the most powerful force in existence." She turned toward her shuttle, her guards falling in around her. "I will be watching you, Elena Vasquez. You and your daughter, and all of your strange, magnificent, impossible species. And when you finally reach the stars, when you come looking for your place in the universe, you will find that there is a friend waiting for you. An ancient monster who learned to be something better, because a human mother reminded her what it meant to love." She paused at the shuttle door and looked back one final time. "Tell them," she said. "Tell everyone on this world what happened here today. Tell them that their survival was not won by weapons or technology, but by the courage of a single mother who refused to run. Tell them that this is the power they carry within themselves, every single one of them. And tell them never to forget it." The shuttle rose into the sky, and the fleet began to withdraw, and Elena stood in the ashes of New York with her daughter in her arms, watching the monsters leave. "Mama?" Sophia whispered. "Did we win?" Elena hugged their daughter tighter than she had ever hugged her before. "Yes, baby," she said, and her voice was filled with wonder. "We won! Humanity won!" Above them, the stars were coming out, and for the first time since the invasion began, they did not look like enemies. They looked like possibilities, like adventures waiting to happen, like a future that humanity had earned by simply being who they were. Somewhere out there, an ancient queen was beginning the long journey toward redemption. And somewhere down here, a 7-year-old girl was looking up at those stars with eyes full of dreams. The universe would never be the same.